Welcome to the TPC Desktop video series. In this video, we'll look at using distance and direction types in COGO. I'm going to start by opening a survey called Learn COGO Ground. It's just like the Learn COGO sample file that ships with Traverse PC, but I've come in and said I want to set this survey to ground instead of grid. So I've got a ground distance at project elevation 500 feet. I'm going to leave the direction in grid bearing for now. And let's come in and take a look at just a typical COGO operation using ground distance instead of grid distance. I think for this sample, I'd like to take a look at just doing a stationing, and then we can see how Traverse PC stations in ground distance versus grid distance. And I want to just remind you that this is really up to you how you want to do your stationing in Traverse PC. Certainly if your project is on a local grid, a grid stationing is just fine. However, if your project is on a state plane grid of some kind and you need to account for grid factor and elevation factor, then you're going to want to do stationing just like I'm going to do in this video. So let's take a look at our tangents traverse. I'll go ahead and just delineate this so you can see it in the drawing. So this is the traverse we're going to work on. In fact, let's go ahead and zoom in around that. Okay, let's come in now and open that tangent traverse up. I'm going to insert a PI at point 2, so we have a curve in here. Let's go ahead and edit point type, point of intersection, and let's put in a 100-foot radius just so we have something. Traverse PC will float the PC and PT in on those tangents for us. And now let's go ahead and choose COGO stations and tell Traverse PC that we want to do 50-foot stationing on the tangents, 25-foot stationing on the curve, and let's choose compute. So Traverse PC just added a traverse called station tangents, and we'll open that in just a moment. I'm going to hit the summary button here, and we can see that Traverse PC is reporting every point that it created. And look at the point labels, even stationing, 4 plus 50, 400, 375 in the curves, 350. So Traverse PC is using the ground distance to create the station label. And let's just make sure it's created those properly. So let's close out that report. We're done with the dialog at this point, and we're done with this original traverse. Let's come back to the Traverse Manager. Here's the traverse we created. Let's open that up. I was going to use a format there real quick, and I think I should have. So let's go back and use an alignment format. So let's recall format called alignment. And that'll make sure we get stationing in here. So here's all the stationing that Traverse PC created. And notice that our distances are ground distance, okay, because our original traverse was a ground distance traverse. So if we open up the format and go to advanced, we see that our distance type is ground distance at 5,000 feet project elevation. And not only is my distance ground distance, but my stationing is ground distance stationing. So 0 plus 50 to 1 plus a pair is 50 feet of ground distance. So I'm looking at my stationing being drawn over here in the drawing view now, and let's just explore this stationing between 0 plus 50 and 1 plus a pair. I'm going to highlight those 2 points in the traverse, and I'm going to, from the toolbar, choose random inverse. So Traverse PC now displays a random inverse between those 2 points. I have a ground distance of 50 feet. So at the top of my random inverse dialog, I see grid bearing and ground distance, so it's carrying that distance type into the COGO, and I see the distance is 50 feet, just like it is in the traverse view. Just to kind of bring the point home here, let's show options, and let's choose a grid distance instead. So I see the grid distance now between 0 plus 50 and 1 plus a pair is 49.99. It's not the same distance I have at the ground for this survey. And that's really what I want you to see in this, is that I choose how I want to use the COGO, in which distance and direction types I want to use. In this case, I said I want stationing to be on the ground at project elevation 5,000 feet. And I've done that in Traverse PC. And the same is true of other COGO operations as well. I have the opportunity to choose the distance and direction type I want, and then the COGO operation performs accordingly based on that selection. Let's close this random inverse dialog out. And I just want to mention one more thing that has to do with the fact that we're dealing in ground distance. In the previous traverse, I inserted a PI and gave traverse BC a 100-foot radius. That 100-foot radius is 100 feet at ground distance. So just like my tangent distance, grid distance, was slightly less, my radius would be slightly less on grid also. So I'm dealing with a radius at my project elevation of 5,000 feet and dealing with ground distance for that input also.